herbs. So let's just jump right in. We're going to do a quick overview on the immune system, then nutrients involved in boosting the immune system, foods that those nutrients can be found in. We're going to talk briefly on some herbs that I use as well, and then supplements, and wrap up with some key points. So just to give you a brief overview of the immune system and how it works. So the immune system is really the body's defense against any invaders. So these invaders can be bacteria, they can be fungi, or in this current pandemic that we're having, it's a virus, right? So it can be any one of those three. The scientific name for the invaders is antigens. Now, once the body senses that there's an attack or there's an invader, these antigens trigger an immune response in the body. Now, one of the main immune responses is the production of proteins that help to fight off these antigens. These proteins are called antibodies. So once the threat is gone, the body then creates a memory bank of sorts, where the cells then are ready to fight if it ever senses that same invader again. Now, this is a very, very simplistic view of how the immune system works, but hopefully it helps you to understand what happens when the immune system is called upon. All right, so there are some nutrients that are, of course, involved in helping us to boost our immune system. The first one that I want to talk about today is going to be vitamin A. Now, we have normally known vitamin A to be associated with eyesight, and it does that, but the roles go beyond eyesight as well. There are many different forms of vitamin A in the body, and each one of that nutrient has a different function. So, matter of fact, vitamin A does a little bit of everything. It helps with eyesight, yes, but it also helps with growth, regulation, and then cell production. And this could be one of the reasons why you tend to see skin creams that has retinol. Retinol is a form of vitamin A, and it helps with aging and skin reproduction and so forth. So normally we derive vitamin A from two main sources. The first source would be the retinoids, which comes from the animal food, so things like beef liver, fish liver oils, like cod liver oils. So it turns out that our mom was quite right when she made us, take cod liver oil as children. You also would find vitamin A in full fat milk and milk products. Now, vitamin A is a fat soluble vitamin, and I will come back to that point, but because it is a fat soluble vitamin, it is only found in full fat milk and milk products. If you have a reduced fat milk or a skim milk, then you would normally see that milk saying fortified with vitamin A and vitamin D. That's because it's skim and the vitamin has been lost, but the food industry now adds it back. The second sources of vitamin A would be the carotenoids. These are the plant sources. So the carotenoids are a group of red, orange, yellow compounds, and beta carotene is just one of those compounds, right? And so once you eat these brightly colored foods like red, oranges, yellows, the beta carotene in those foods are then converted to vitamin A inside the body. So food sources would be, hopefully you can see it, things like carrots, pumpkin, butternut squash, sweet potato, apricots, cantaloupe, mangoes, anything that's really red, orange, yellow, like that, would be a very good source of vitamin A. Now, the leafy greens, they're also very good sources of vitamin A. So things like spinach and kale and broccoli, very good source of vitamin A, but because of the chlorophyll in those plants, you don't see the red-orange color. So that color is masked by the chlorophyll. But they are also very good sources of the vitamin. So we mentioned before that vitamin A was a fat-soluble vitamin. And that simply means that a fat-soluble vitamin is one that is not soluble in water, but it is also absorbed and transported in a way that is similar to fat. It also means that the fat-soluble vitamins are usually better absorbed when taken with a fat. Okay, and because they are fat soluble, they are usually stored in the body. So it is very easy to get too much of the vitamin, which can then lead to other adverse health side effects. So authorities like the American Heart Association, the World Health Organization, and the American Cancer Society all agree that it is better for us to get these vitamins from food instead of supplements because of the risk of over-supplementation. So you can see the pictures there of the vitamin A foods. Then the next one that we're going to talk about is one that is very well known. That is vitamin C. I think this vitamin is most known for helping with the immune system. And while that is true, vitamin C also helps with a lot of other functions in the body as well. One of those being collagen synthesis. So collagen is something that helps to protect the arteries and the walls of the heart. And it also is the protective layer that comes when you have a cut or a bruise or a burn, right? So it's very important in that way. Vitamin C also is a very powerful antioxidant and is very good in helping with iron absorption. So if you have been told that you have anemia or you're low in iron, then it's best to take your iron tablet with a vitamin C food. That will help with the absorption of the iron. Now, unlike vitamin A, vitamin C is a water-soluble vitamin. This means that it dissolves in water, yes, but it also is not stored in the body. And so because it's not stored in the body, you have to get a continuous supply of this vitamin every day so that you do not become deficient in this vitamin. So vitamin C is also very vulnerable to heat and oxygen. So that means that raw fruits and vegetables would have more of the nutrient than their cooked counterparts. And then also, because the nutrient is easily destroyed by oxygen, you want to store foods and juices properly, and then you want to consume them within a week's time so that you get as much of the vitamin as possible. Now, what I also want to mention before we go is that vitamin C is not a magic potion. Sometimes I think we talk about this nutrient as if you just pop a vitamin C tablet and then you'll be good to go. It's not a magic potion. It has benefits for immune health, yes, but it also needs to be eaten in conjunction with an overall healthy diet, because there are other substances, some that we don't even know about, that can interact with each other in the food and provide other benefits for us. And then something that we have been taught for years and years, and I'm gonna go against it right now, so hold on. It is that vitamin C does not stop a cold. Yeah, it doesn't stop a cold. There are no studies, no science that support vitamin C stops a cold. Now, there are some studies that suggest that vitamin C, if taken at the onset of a cold or flu, can help to lessen the symptoms and lessen the severity and the duration of the cold. So no evidence that suggests it does stop the cold. And then finally, we do not need large amounts of this vitamin because it's not stored in the body, but then also we get it basically every day when we eat fruits and vegetables, right? And then the body will only use what it needs and then excrete the rest of it. So we do not need large amounts of it. So here are some foods that are high in the vitamin. Basically, you will find a lot of vitamins in any fresh fruits and vegetables. I know a lot of times when we think of vitamin C, we think of only oranges, but there are some foods like bell peppers, especially the red bell peppers, that are much higher in vitamin C than oranges. Also, kiwi, very, very high in vitamin C. And again, you have the leafy greens like spinach, kale, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, very good source of vitamin C. And then again, any fresh fruits and vegetables would go. Mangoes, papaya, all of those would be very good sources of vitamin C. The next one is vitamin D. And although vitamin D is called a vitamin, it really functions as a hormone in the body. And a hormone is simply a chemical messenger. So that means it is made in one part of the body, but it solicits a response in another part of the body. So unlike vitamin A, vitamin D is not considered an essential nutrient. Now, what do I mean by that? I don't mean that it is not important, far from it. I simply mean that when a nutrient is considered essential, it means that it can only be found from foods. Vitamin D is not that way. Vitamin D can be made in the body from the sunlight. So because of that fact, vitamin D is not considered an essential nutrient. So the body makes its own vitamin D from sunlight, right? Now, this, of course, is based on the amount of melanin in our skin. It's also based on the length of time that we are out in the sun. It's also based on the pollution that's in the air, whether it's a bright day, whether it's kind of smoggy and foggy. So there are many factors. For the most part, though, dark-skinned people, people who have lots of melanin in their skin, they have to spend a lot longer outside in the sun to get the same benefit that a light-skinned or a fairer-skinned person would get. So we would have to spend like about 3 hours in the sun to get the same benefit of like 15 minutes for a lighter or a fairer-skinned person, because the melanin is protecting our skin from the rays of the sun. Because the body makes its own vitamin D, there are not as many food sources that has vitamin D, but there are some food that has vitamin D. So you would find it in veal and beef, egg yolk to be a good source of the nutrient as well. And then, of course, milk and milk products again. Vitamin D is also a fat-soluble vitamin like vitamin A. So again, if the milk is fat-free or skimmed, then you will find it being fortified. Also, fatty fish like sardines and mackerel and salmon are very good sources of vitamin D. Mushrooms, again, is another good source of the vitamin. And then another not so well-known one would be vitamin E. Vitamin E is a very powerful antioxidant. Now, I've been talking about antioxidants before, especially when I mentioned vitamin A and then also vitamin C. These are also antioxidant nutrients. What is an antioxidant? Okay, so do you know when you slice up an apple and you leave it out for a few seconds, a minute most, it turns brown, right? So that browning process is called oxidation. But to prevent that browning, you normally would squeeze like a lemon or a lime or any kind of acid on it, and it would protect the apple, right, from turning brown. So the same thing kind of happens in the body. So the lemon then is acting like an antioxidant. It's protecting the cells of the apple. The same thing happens in the body. An antioxidant then is a compound that protects the cells of the body from damage, okay? That damage can be things like heart disease, it can be some kind of cancers, it can be aging. I mean, we're all gonna age at some point, right? But these antioxidants help to protect the cells longer from these damage. Yeah, but now before you run out and stock up on vitamin E supplements, studies have shown that the antioxidant supplements do not really have the same health benefits as those that are in food, okay? And one possible reason could be because they tend to work in combination with other nutrients, with other chemicals that may be in the food, with other antioxidants, right? And you cannot get that same benefit from a supplement. So here are some food sources of the vitamin. You would normally find them in vegetable oils, and then also salad dressings, because the salad dressing is made with vegetable oil usually. So things like, sunflower seed oil, olive oil, avocado oil, all of those oils would be very good sources of vitamin E. Then of course, sunflower seeds, any nuts and seeds, almonds, sunflower seeds, peanuts would be also good sources of vitamin E. And then avocados, all right? So these are good sources of that nutrient. Then moving on to another not so well known nutrient in terms of immune health is protein. Now, proteins are all over the body, and they are involved in so many different functions in the body. Whenever the body is growing, whenever it's repairing, whenever it's replacing any kind of cells or tissue, proteins are involved, right? So then it only makes sense that protein be involved in helping with boosting the immune system, right? And if you remember when we talked about the first slide on the immune health, we said that protein is used to make antibodies, right? So then protein is a key building block for the immune cells, all right? Protein is found throughout the body. It's found in our muscles, in our bone, in our skin, in our hair. Virtually every part of the body has protein, okay? Now, protein food sources are pretty well known, I would venture to say. They are usually found in animal foods. We call animal foods complete protein, and I'll explain quickly. So animal foods are referred to as complete proteins because each protein is made up of many small building blocks, okay? So those small building blocks are called amino acids, and it takes many of those, 12, 13 of those, to make a complete protein chain. So animal foods are considered complete because they have that complete protein chain there. Plant foods, on the other hand, are considered incomplete proteins because they are missing one or two of the amino acid to complete the protein chain. So for example, let's talk about rice and beans, right? Rice has some protein, but it has some amino acids that's missing to complete the protein chain. Beans also have quite a bit of protein, but it also has some amino acids that's missing as well. When you put rice and beans together, it just so happens that rice have the same missing amino acid that bean has, and beans have the same missing amino acid that rice has. So when you put those two foods together, they now complement each other and they make a complete protein. Does that make sense? Hopefully it does. Okay, so when you put rice and beans together, you now have a complete protein. Okay, now there are some exceptions to that rule. Sorry, and two exceptions to the plant being an incomplete rule would be one, soybean. Soybeans are a plant food, yes, but it is considered a complete protein. It's a very good source of protein. And then quinoa. Quinoa is, again, another plant source of protein, but is considered a complete protein. So this is why we say that animal foods are a complete versus incomplete source of protein. And then you can see on the slides there what they are. Beans, and then edamame, which is soybeans, and quinoa, any kinds of meat, chicken, red meat, eggs, and milk. Then moving on to zinc. Zinc is a trace mineral, which means that the body uses it in very, very minute amounts. But although it is very minute, if it is not there, then we have problems as well. Okay, and zinc is very instrumental in immune health. So zinc also helps with sperm production. It also helps with normal taste perception and wound healing. So when I did my internship in Jackson many years ago, I did a few weeks on the burn floors. And so because these patients have lots of wounds, zinc was one of our best friends, right? Because it really helps with wound healing. Now, zinc absorption from the foods that we eat varies depending on the body's status. So if you have good levels of zinc and you eat foods that are high in zinc, then the body will just excrete the zinc that it takes in because you have enough of it. But if you have low levels of zinc, then you will absorb more of the mineral. It's a very tight control that the body has going on there. So where can we find zinc in foods? Any high protein foods would have zinc in it, but especially shellfish like oysters. Oysters is one of the best sources of zinc. Also, things like chickpeas, nuts and seeds, and wheat germ. I think I mentioned wheat germ earlier before when I was talking about vitamin E. So let's talk a little bit about what wheat germ is. So wheat germ is the innermost portion of the wheat kernel. It's full of fiber, but also full of protein and calcium, iron, potassium, magnesium, and omega-3. So wheat germ is a nutritional powerhouse, right? But it's not a food that you just go out and buy. So how do we use wheat germ? We can add it to our smoothies. We can add it to our yogurt parfaits. We can add it to meatloaf as a binder. We can add it to our cereals and muffins. So it's a great way to add added nutrition to our foods, right? Now, vegetable sources of zinc, that is based primarily on the soil that the food is grown in, right? So if the soil has lots of zinc, then the vegetable would. But normally, the oysters and these foods would be good sources of zinc. And then on to another one that, again, I think is maybe not so well known as vitamin C would be the prebiotics and the probiotics. These are the good bacteria that live in our gut, right? I firmly believe that good health begins in the gut, right? If we don't have a healthy gut, then eating healthy foods kind of doesn't make sense, because you would not be effectively and efficiently able to absorb the nutrients that the foods are providing you with, right? So one way that I helped to remind myself when I was in school learning about pre and probiotics was, I think about pre meaning first, right? So prebiotics means these are the bacteria that comes first. They provide the food for the probiotics. Pro normally means good, so for the good bacteria, right? So the prebiotics are the food for the good bacteria. Of course, these help with immune health. They also help with the metabolizing of nutrients and other drugs. It also helps to maintain the structure and the function of the intestinal tract. Some foods of the prebiotics would be things like asparagus, leeks. Leeks is not a food that you just go out and buy either. Yeah, but leeks would be a part of the onion family. It's very oniony, like, for lack of a better word. Things like beans, again, bananas, garlic, onions, and then whole grains. These would be considered the prebiotics. And sorry, I don't have the label at the top there, but they would be considered the prebiotics. Then the next slide would be for the probiotics. These usually are found in fermented dairy foods like yogurt. And then kefir is a fermented dairy drink. It's like a yogurt, but it's drinkable. But you have to look for on the box or the container that the food comes in, it has to say live cultures. Like, you don't just want to eat yogurt full of sugar. So it has to have live culture for it to count as a good bacteria, right? Then we also have things like kimchi and sauerkraut. So kimchi and sauerkraut are both fermented cabbage dishes. Kimchi is a bit spicier with other things added to it. And then sauerkraut is basically just the salt and then the acid. And it sits for a couple days. So those are what we consider probiotic type foods. And then we're getting down to the end. I'm watching my time as well. Then we have, quickly, herbs and spices. These aren't like dietary staples, meaning that we eat them every day, but they may be helpful in some natural alternatives and some viral symptoms. There's been some very convincing studies done on elderberry and how it helps to reduce upper respiratory symptoms in colds and flu. And then also ginger, garlic. Just be careful with the garlic a bit, because garlic acts like an anticoagulant in the body. What does that mean? That means that if you are on a blood thinning medicine like warfarin or Coumadin, then you want to be careful with how much garlic you take, because the garlic can increase bleeding. Things like turmeric and noni are also very, very good herbs and spices to add as an alternative, and also anti-inflammatory, antiviral herbs. Then we're going to briefly talk about supplementation. When should you supplement? Okay. Usually I believe that if you are eating an overall healthy diet, a one a day would be good enough for you. You don't need to have, you know, tons and tons of supplements, vitamin A, vitamin E, vitamin C, stock up. But persons who are vegetarian or vegan would tend to lack some nutrients, because some of the nutrients in those foods like meat that they cut out are only found in animal products, right? So things like vitamin B12, zinc, calcium, and iron are usually found in animal foods. Calcium and iron can be found in plant foods as well, but again, they're not as readily available and absorbed properly as they would be from animal foods. Our recommendation is to only take the recommended daily allowance of supplements, especially the fat-soluble vitamins, because they are stored in the body and you can take too much and have an overdose and then have other adverse health effects, right? The water-soluble vitamins, again, they aren't stored in the body, but they are, you're basically going to be taking, or making expensive urine if you take too much of it. So you're wasting money. And then supplements should only be taken as a supplement, as the name suggests. That means that you do not take it in place of a healthy diet. You take it to complement an already healthy diet, right? And then you have to be careful, because there can also be some interactions between the supplements that you take and your various medications. So if you're going to, add a new supplement to your regimen, please speak to a dietitian or speak to your general care physician, just to make sure that there are no adverse interactions with your medications that you may be, looking to take. And then finally, our final slide is just some key points that I want you to, take away. So I've talked a lot about eating fresh fruits and vegetables to get these nutrients. These vegetables and fruits can be fresh, it can be frozen, it can be canned, or it can be dried. Sometimes frozen and canned may be a better option to get the nutrients, or to get the most of the nutrients, because fresh foods are sitting a long time in IGA, then we buy them and they sit some more in our fridge before we cook them. So every time they sit, or as long as they sit, they are losing some of the nutrients as well. So unless you have like a backyard garden, then your best benefit in terms of getting the most nutrients can be from a frozen or canned nutrient. And then depending on other factors, a healthy immune system may not prevent you from contracting COVID-19, but it will definitely, lessen the severity of the symptoms. And then when you eat, just aim to eat the rainbow, lots of reds and blues and greens and, different colors, because these foods are loaded with nutrients that will definitely benefit our immune system. And then finally, if there's one thing that this COVID-19 has taught us, is that hand washing is absolutely important. And so as a plug here, I am also a certified Surf Safe trainer. And so I would love to come into your restaurant or to your establishment and teach your staff Surf Safe tips and get them Surf Safe certified, so that we can prevent other outbreaks of diseases like COVID-19 that are basically, based on hand washing. So if you would like that, please let me know. And I would be more than happy to do that. All right, thank you. That's it. If you have questions, I would be more than happy to try and answer them for you.
Thank you so much, Tamika. Very, very informative. I've learned a lot. I've learned that I should eat the rainbows, and taking too much supplement pretty much just results in expensive urine, and continue to wash my hands. So if I can, I'm sure there's more that I have gleaned from. I know that there's more that I've gleaned from that, but those three definitely stands out in the midst of COVID-19. The forum is now open for questions. Feel free to unmute your microphones to do that. Or you can send a question in the chat as well.
Maybe it was that good and they all understood.
Okay, the chat is, okay, so there's a question here. What is kefir? Is that?
Kefir, yeah.
Kefir?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, kefir. So kefir is a fermented yogurt-like drink. It's like yogurt, but it's drinkable, meaning that you can, chug it, right? Instead of eating it with a spoon. So it's a fermented drink. It has like the good bacteria, and it's helpful to our gut bacteria.
Excellent. And then there's a question, what happens if I take too much supplements?
Well, like I was saying in the presentation, it depends on whether the supplement is a fat-soluble vitamin or if it's a water-soluble vitamin. So if it is a fat-soluble vitamin, if you take too much of it, then that vitamin is going to be stored in the liver, right? Which can lead to liver diseases or kidney problems or other health issues. If it's a water-soluble vitamin like vitamin C, then it's just going to be excreted. So you're basically just wasting money. So the fat-soluble vitamins would be vitamins A, vitamin D, vitamins E, vitamin K. So those are the fat-soluble vitamins. Those are the ones that can be stored in the body.